Hey everyone, welcome to Facebook Live for our next tax chat segment. Today we're going to be talking about IRS notices. Danielle?
Thanks, Justin. I'm Danielle from the Legal Aid Society of Columbus with the tax team, and I'm here with Megan Sullivan, Director of the Low Income Taxpayer Clinic at the Legal Aid Society of Columbus, and Luke Meenick, Staff Attorney for the LITC of Southeastern Ohio Legal Services. Today we're going to discuss IRS notices. Feel free to leave a comment below and we'll answer what we can. To start us off, what are the most common letters people may see from the IRS right now?
Right now, the most common notices that taxpayers are going to be receiving from the IRS are what are known as math error notices. They'll also be receiving identity verification letters and audit notices.
And what is a math error notice?
Well, most of the time, when the IRS doesn't agree with the information you have on your return, they have to give the taxpayer an opportunity to respond and petition the tax court before they can assess a tax or reduce a refund. We'll talk about that process a little bit later today and a little bit later in May also. But in some instances, when the taxpayer makes a mistake on the return, like adding numbers wrong or not submitting the right form, the IRS can skip that process where someone has a taxpayer or has the right to petition tax court. This also applies when information on your return doesn't match what's on the IRS records for the recovery rebate credit or the child tax credit. When that happens, the IRS will send the letter, which is commonly known as the math error notice, even though notifying the taxpayer that there was an error on the return. The letter lists a new refund amount and lists possible reasons why it was reduced or lists a debt amount. How this works in practice is if a taxpayer in early 2021 is sent by the IRS a $1,400 stimulus payment. However, the taxpayer doesn't receive it because it gets lost in the mail or something else happens. Then when the taxpayer files their 2021 tax return, they claim the $1,400 as a recovery rebate credit. When the IRS receives the return, it doesn't match their records. So they send the taxpayer a notice that lets them know that they've reduced their refund by $1,400. Although it really just lists a new refund amount, it doesn't say we've reduced your refund by $1,400 because that would make it a little bit too easy to figure out what's going on. This can also happen with child tax credit if the taxpayer claims a portion that the IRS thinks that they already paid out in 2021.
And will the notice be labeled specifically math error notice?
No, it will not. It may say something like changes to your 2021 1040, adjusted refund, or amount due. There is a notice number in the top right-hand corner that will say CP11, CP12, CP13, or CP16.
And how should I respond to that notice?
First, check your own records. Check your bank records, or you can even call your bank to check the status of automated deposits of those stimulus payments and the child tax credit payments in 2021. Sometimes the IRS is right on these notices. For married individuals, check to see if your spouse received your portion of the payment. The IRS paid out the stimulus payment based on information from a valid joint return filed in a prior year. That is a valid payment to you, even if it was to your spouse's bank account. If after you review your own records and you're fairly sure you claimed the right amount on your return, you should take these steps. First, you should contact the IRS by mail within 60 days of the date on the notice of the either CP11, CP12, or CP13. You should also send a letter to the IRS via certified mail. You'll want to get proof of mailing stamped at the post office so you can prove you sent the letter within the time frame. Your letter should enclose a copy of the notice and a statement that you disagree. Keep a copy of what you send along with proof of timely mailing in a safe place. It'd be a good idea to also take a picture of what you send and your certified mailing slip and email them to yourself in case you lose the paper documents. Remember to delete your photos from your camera rolls so that you don't accidentally share your social security number. If you would miss the 60-day deadline, it's not ideal because you won't have the same rights, but you can still respond. If you respond after 60 days, though, you'll need to provide documentation that you are correct. Documentation can include copies of your bank statements showing that you did not receive those deposits.
And Megan, you talked about ID verification letters. What does that mean?
In some instances, the IRS is going to send a letter saying you need to verify your identity with the IRS before they're going to process your return. This helps prevent an identity thief from gaining access to your refund. The most common letter you'll receive is a 5071C or a 6331C. If you received the letter and didn't file a tax return, then you know that somebody may have filed a fraudulent return using your name and social security number. If that's the case, you might be a victim of identity theft and need to file an affidavit with the IRS. And for more information about identity theft, you can visit irs.gov/ID. But you should also still respond to this notice so the IRS knows that you didn't file that tax return.
And what is the best way to handle an ID verification letter?
The best way to respond to that, to an ID verification letter, is to verify your identity online. You can access the portal at irs.gov and search for identity verification service in the top right-hand corner. It's quick, secure, and available 24 hours a day. You will need to register on the website before verifying your identity. You will also need to have a copy of the letter you received and a copy of the tax return for the tax year shown in the letter. Additionally, to verify your identity with ID.me, the service provider for the IRS, you'll need to provide a photo of an identity document, such as a driver's license, state ID, or passport, and you'll also need to take a selfie or video chat with a smartphone or a computer with a webcam. Although the letter requests a response within 30 days, the IRS will continue to work with you regardless of the amount of days that has passed.
And what if I don't want to complete this process online?
If you don't want to verify your identity online or actually try and have failed and haven't been able to do so, you can call the IRS at a toll-free identity verification telephone number that's listed in one of those letters. When you call, you need to have the letter in front of you, the tax return referenced in the letter. That would be your Form 1040, not the supporting income documents. A prior year's tax return other than the year in the letter if you filed one. For example, if you're asked to verify your ID for 2021 and you filed a 2020 return, you'll need to have that handy. If you didn't file a 2020 return, try to have the last return that you filed on hand to answer questions about it with the IRS. Finally, you need to have the supporting documents that you filed with the tax return, the Form W-2 and 1099, Schedule C, and all of those forms that you filed with your return.
And what happens if I cannot verify online or over the phone?
If you cannot verify your identity online or over the phone, the IRS will ask that you schedule an appointment and bring the documents that Megan just described to your local IRS office to verify in person.
And I verified my identity. What now?
So after you successfully verify your identity, it may take up to 9 weeks for the IRS to complete the processing of your return. Normally, you can check the status of your return at Where's My Refund 2 to 3 weeks after you verify your identification.
And why would I receive an audit notice?
The IRS sends out hundreds of thousands of audit notices every year to taxpayers who claim the earned income credit or other refundable credits on their returns. There's no rhyme or reason as to why they send out the letters. Sometimes it's because somebody claimed, a dependent that you claimed on your return, but sometimes it really is just random. The IRS sends notices CE75 or 75A or other letters asking the taxpayer to document their eligibility for those refundable credits. It's really important to respond to the notice timely and to send in the documentation requested by the IRS. So what documentation is appropriate is subject of a much longer, probably conversation, and we will present that in later May 20th to give you some good information. But in the meantime, if you need that information, you can go to taxpayeradvocate.irs.gov and search for EITC. There's some good ideas about what documentation you can use to respond to those notices.
Thanks, Megan. And thank you, Luke, and to everyone else for watching. If you have any questions that we did not answer, please leave us a comment below and we'll answer what we can. You're welcome to visit our websites, columbuslegalaid.org or souls.org, with all of our information underneath tax tabs with our in-depth videos on a variety of tax-related topics. Stay tuned for the beginning of May when our tax team is joined by the domestic team to discuss Domestic Violence Awareness Month and how interpersonal or domestic violence may affect your taxes. And as Megan mentioned, on May 20th, when we'll be back again to talk about more notices. Justin?
Thanks, Danielle. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you in May.